Hello, friend. Thanks for joining me for another book chat. Today, let's talk about some science fiction, specifically some space opera science fiction. Consider Phlebas by Iain M Banks. This book was originally published back in 1987. It's book one of the series known as The Culture. So this was a reread for me. I read this about maybe 10 years ago, and I decided that I'd like to revisit the Culture series because I didn't get very far in it, and I decided just to start over with book one. And as it turned out, that was a good idea because I didn't remember, it turns out, very much about this book at all. So it was basically a new read again. At least that's how it felt. So, spoiler-free warning here. This book is an adventure in space, and it involves war prisoners, escapes, getaways, captures, chases, and so I'll be very careful in this chat to not give away anything that I think that would detract from a first-time reader's experience with this book, because it was a lot of fun to read. So, for those not familiar with the Culture universe, the Culture is an interstellar civilization of the far future, which is a post-scarcity society, meaning all the basic needs of life are met, and that really frees the inhabitants then to really diversify and to develop themselves in lots of interesting ways. They basically live in peace in the Culture, typically, and so it's almost like a utopia. But we'll talk more about the Culture here in a bit, because it's not quite a utopia, as we'll see. So what is this particular book about, though? So I mentioned briefly that the Culture is kind of a utopia, right? And mostly lives in peace. Well, not everybody's on board with the Culture or its values. And so among those not fans of the Culture are the Adherans. Now, the Adherans are actually not human. They're an alien species. And they are, as I mentioned, war is pretty uncommon in the Culture, but in this particular book, the Adherans and the Culture, their relationship has finally devolved down into war. So, as far as discussing what happens in the book, I mentioned again, I want to be really careful about spoilers. So, what I thought I would do in this chat is to just go over a few of the main characters and sort of where they're coming from. And in that sense, you'll sort of get an idea of what's going on in the book. So our main character's name is Horza. Now, Horza is a human, but he is a changer, meaning he can change I think he's human if I remember right. He can change his appearance. So he's like a shapeshifter kind of person. And Horza's actually working for the Adherans. This is because he really, really, really dislikes the Culture. He dislikes the Culture because he thinks they are too dependent on their machines, their AI. They have the Culture civilization includes also sentient AI, and he thinks that the Culture is spiritually empty. Meanwhile, the Adherans are sort of authoritarian, and they're dogmatic about their religion that they have, which Horza doesn't necessarily agree with. But at the same time, he believes that, well, at least they believe in something, and he thinks the Culture doesn't. He thinks the Culture's a decadent society. One character from the Culture tells Horza at one point, "I really don't understand you, Horza. You must know how many species, how many civilizations, how many systems, how many individuals have been either destroyed or throttled by the Adherans and their crazy goddamn religion. What the hell has the Culture ever done compared to that?" And then Horza says, "I'm all for people being allowed to live their own lives, but now they're up against you lot, and that's what makes a difference to me, because I'm against you rather than for them." So Horza's really against the Culture. The other person in that quote is Balveda. She is basically the nemesis of Horza in this book, and she is an agent for the Culture. She's been sent to try to apprehend Horza. She's part of a group in the culture called Special Circumstances, which is a branch of contact that focuses on interactions with interactions with civilizations outside of the culture. But Special Circumstances methods can be a bit shady. But anyway, Horza has been tasked by the Adirans to find and capture a mind. So a mind, this particular mind, is a sentient AI that's gone into hiding. So the AI, a mind, can be a ship, for example. And so this mind is kind of on the run, and the Adirans want to get their hands on it, and Balveda is, of course, determined to not let that happen. So that's a lot of the conflict in the book, is Horza trying to get to the mind, and Balveda sort of trying to stop him. So this was kind of an interesting experience reading this book. I myself identified more with the culture, but the main character of the book, Horza, is, through who we see most of the story. He's from his perspective, he's very anti-culture. So that was really interesting way to really read this book, because I was like, for the most part, I was rooting for Balveda. I was rooting for kind of his nemesis. So anyway, his reasoning is explained in the book, but I feel like there's more to it than what's in the book. I feel like there has to be a bigger backstory than what I was managed to get from the book about why Horza hates the culture so much, considering that the Adirans seem like a really terrible civilization, really violent and repressive. So during the course of the novel, we also meet this ship of pirates. So again, this means that it shows us, the reader, that the world's not all a utopian kind of culture universe. There's lots out there besides the culture, and among them are pirates. And the pirates are on this ship called the Clear Air Turbulence. And I thought that was a really cool name, Clear Air Turbulence. The ship's names in this book are named like this, and I thought that was pretty fun. So among the pirates, several main characters there, or several characters, but among them is a woman called Yalson, and she's kind of a furry humanoid. Again, humans have adapted and diversified into lots of different ways. I'm not sure if she started out from being a human, maybe her species did, or if she's just a humanoid type alien. I'm not really sure. But nevertheless, she plays a pretty big part in most of the story. So I think that's all I'm going to say about the plot of the book, just so that I don't get into any kind of spoilers. But a few thoughts. So the title, Consider Phlebas. So apparently that comes from a line from The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot, the poem, The Wasteland. And the line says, "Gentile or Jew, O you who turn the wheel and look to windward, consider Phlebas, who was once handsome and tall as you." So I don't really understand the relationship between this poem and this book, but if anybody out there has any ideas about that, I'd love to hear those in the comments. But it's pretty cool that he took that quote, "Consider Phlebas," from a poem. Thought that was kind of fun. So a couple of other interesting things in the book is the game of damage. There's this game that we learn about in the book. We get to witness one of the games. It's a kind of a rare game because it's illegal in most civilized worlds. It's a kind of poker, but each player they must bring these lives to the game. Lives are real live people who have agreed to be one in this game at the risk of their life for various reasons. Criminals, mentally unstable people, just other sorts of people will sell or get money to take this risk. And so there is a game of damage in the book that is going to take place on this orbital that is going to be destroyed by the culture. So it's been kind of being evacuated as part of the Adiran War. The culture is about to destroy this orbital. And so, but never, so while that's going on, then in sort of that vacuum, there's an organization that puts together a damage game. So we learn a bit about that, and we see that it's a bit, that's a bit gruesome. And so that's also really not culture, right? That's not a utopian kind of thing. So that's the thing. The culture doesn't seem to stop this from happening, this sort of thing from happening outside their own, civilization. So they don't sort of go out and crusade to stop things like this if it's not in their civilization. They don't seem to in this book anyway. So there's another thing that we kind of come across that's pretty interesting, and that's a cult. And this cult is on an island, and they have sort of a chieftain who's a cannibal. The followers are all really thin because they just eat trash, and just it's really disgusting, actually. And so they're almost famine. They're almost starving to death, but their chieftain actually eats people. And that's also pretty grim and gruesome, and but really interesting to see that as the reader as this unfolds in the book. So again, about the minds, this was something that's developed. There's different kinds of AI. There's the minds, and then there's drones, and there's all sorts of levels of the AI. And one of the interesting things about them is that they can live for obviously they have really basically an indefinite lifespan. So some of them are, like a couple of thousand years old or older. And so the minds that the AI that runs the ship is pretty interesting. And then there's a drone in the book that's sort of a wisecracking, snarky kind of drone, and he's really a fun character, and I really had fun with that. So I think I will stop the chat with that. I had a lot of fun with this book. It was a really fun, sort of adventuresome read, and I will be reading the next book in the Culture series called The Player of Games. I will get to that this year yet, so stay tuned for that. But my next chat is actually going to switch gears, and we are going to chat about A Room with a View by E.M. Forster. I have finished this already, and I will have a chat on it coming up soon. So until next time, take care. Bye.